Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for choosing to be with me, because there's almost certainly a better talk in the other track. I'm not going to say what this title is, but try saying it 10 times quickly and I'll give you a sticker. The token, this is me, Will Stelzbloy. I'm a runner of a cybersecurity company called Insecurity. Started off in digital forensics after my master's, doing criminal forensics, so crime scene, bagging and tagging, analysing evidence, going to court, putting bad people in prison. Defected to the dark side, pen testing and all the good fun offensive stuff in 2014 and have never looked back since. Lucky enough to have been a black hat trainer for the last 7 years, and I've been lucky to have spoken and trained at other places as well. Nice to be at home for once. By that I mean in England. The talk's about passwords, so the second to last bullet point shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Big password cracking fan. Helped run Password Village at DEF CON for the last few years. And yeah, let's move on. Okay, so we've got a bit of a journey. Lots of different things we're going to look at today. We're going to start off with some unorthodox, creative, slightly non-traditional password and passphrase attacking techniques. Things to really consider doing when your traditional kind of wordless rule attacks fail you. We're then going to go on to some foreign language stuff and some fun, look at some optimizations, and wrap up with a little tool to help automate some of your non-distributed workflows. Right, you'll also notice this symbol might be unfamiliar to some people. I'm a big Hashcat fanboy. It's not the only tool that will be in the slide, but Hashcat will be following us around. Right, 2-element passphrases. Let's just get started. This is kind of as simple as it gets. So when we talk about elements in a passphrase, we're going beyond the word password or secure or let me in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, QWERTY would be a 2-element passphrase, for example. Hashcat, in this case, A1 is combinator mode, take 2 word lists, bash them together, and it'll mix and match all the words, all the candidates in list 1 with all the candidates in list 2. Nothing untoward there. Right, let's start adding delimiters, because you know what? Adding delimiters helps. Lots of people use spaces, it's the main one people use, but commas, colons and things aren't uncommon also. We can just adopt the same command, add in a -J, so Hashcat allows you 2 single rule sort of entries here, -J and -K for your left and right dictionaries, and the $space is append a space. So what we're just doing is take the top 100, insert a space, and then add again top 100. Pipe that to Hashcat, business as usual. But we can also add rules to this, like traditional rule sets that people use. So again, we can still insert our space, but this time we can just tack on a rule. I've got one rule to rule them still in here because I finally, after a bit of nagging from other people, revamped that in 2023. Some of you might have heard of one rule to rule them all. That's what I made in 2017, but there was a lot of performance updates. So it's the same performance, but basically a few thousand rules less. So a little bit quicker. Good for fast hashes. Don't use on things like bcrypt, scrypt, anything slow. It'll never finish in your lifetime. Right then, that's 2. Let's move on to 3-element passphrases. Okay. Print Processor, another tool. Doesn't come with Hashcat, standalone GitHub repository. It's a nice candidate generator. It takes a single word list as an input and then chains together n numbers of elements together and mixes and matches them. So if you gave it RockU, for example, and said, I want a minimum of 3 elements and a maximum of 4, it would pick 3 and 4 words in every possible combination it could for your input list and chain them together. RockU's even though RockU is itself a very small dictionary, it would take a very long time to perform this kind of attack with it. So sometimes better for smaller, more target-specific word lists. But you can set a minimum or a maximum password length. You can set a minimum or a maximum element length. And in either way, pipe that to Hashcat, business as usual. We can make it work with our delimited lists, like before. In this example, we do have to pre-create our word list. So what we've done here is taken our top 100 dictionary and we've then created it with a space. We've inserted a space to the end of that dictionary, so every line ends in a trailing space. Very important here, because when we send that to Hashcat, -J with the closed square bracket will delete the trailing character, so you're not ending up with a trailing space. Hope that makes sense, and it will give you something akin to what you can see here. But again, without that trailing space at the end, I should be using my pointer. Look at that. To delete it with the -J. But there are more ways we can do this. And there is another tool that comes with Hashcat utils called Combinator X. Not probably as well known as Combinator, which itself is a binary that you can use to take 2 words together. There are pros and cons to using Combinator X with prints. One of the really good pros about Combinator X is its flexibility with regards, as you can see here, with variable delimiters. So if we take 3 files, we've got file 1, 2 and 3 over here, we can forcefully insert a space in separator 1 and separator 2. You could do a colon and a space, or a space and a comma, or whatever you want. So it allows for a greater degree of flexibility when creating more delimited passphrase attacks. Prints, unfortunately, is a little bit more rigid, and you would have to have pre-delimited word lists in order to kind of achieve this. So, if we bring combinator X back into our chat chains, this is how we might emulate a 3 or a 4, or however many you're going for, element passphrase, specifying your first, second and third lists. One thing to note with combinator X, it only allows you to use the same dictionary twice, the same word list. So if you want to combine the word list 5 times, that's fine. Just copy, paste and rename the file, because it won't let you do it otherwise. But you can still emulate this activity. Okay, what about case toggling? We're humans, okay? And password cracking, just like cybersecurity, is a human problem, not a technical one. It's a psychological study. And when we choose our passwords, historically, we love to put a capital letter for the first letter of our password. When we create passphrases, it's not uncommon. You might have 3 words, 3 elements separated by a space, but the first letter gets capitalised. Well, that's going to be tricky to do unless you're using rules. And a guy called Toxic, part of Team Hashcat, his real name's Yanis, he's got the Toxic 3 rule, as he's dubbed it, which is shipped with Hashcat and can really help automate doing this kind of thing. The descriptions from the Hashcat wiki are shown here, but as you can see on the top here, the 3 rules allow you to toggle the case of the start of each letter within a specific element after a given delimiter. So in this time, you can see we've got spaces and the letters being capitalised as you go along. And similarly, we've got the E rule, which will just capitalise everything down the bottom. So a single rule can then emulate that, and you can, of course, attack a much, much larger of candidates in this process. So let's bring it all back again. In the full command, you can use your combinator X or your prints, tack on a rule, and then you can start to see different case capitalisations. So I think in this one, we've just got that Jose 123 where there's a capital J you can see there. All of these excerpts, by the way, are done from data breaches or have been home stuff. So none of these are synthetic. It's all kind of real-life data been using for testing. Okay, engrams. Engrams are great. We should all be using engrams. There's your token Wikipedia entry. As you can see here, if you take a string of words, an engram is a sequence of these defined by a number of our choosing. So if we take that string, B-sides leaders and Austin Khan, we can look at it in 2 and in 3 gram variants, and it's quite obvious to see what you're doing here. Now, this is fantastic, and you'd be amazed at the mileage you can get by generating words based on engrams to attack your hashes. There's great tooling out there that can also do it for characters and character sets. So you can slice up on a given number of characters and increment that as you go along. If you've got passphrases that are QWERTY in capitals, lowercase password, uppercase secure, for example, you can do character sets. These are called C and K grams, and they allow you to splice an individual kind of boundaries of your choosing. So it's really, really powerful. There's a couple of options there, but I would highly recommend going for Gramify. It's much, much more modern. It's very flexible, and it's really useful for generating these kinds of word lists. Now, as we started off giving a sentence as a demonstration, it's unsurprising that this kind of attack is great for large texts. Things like the Bible, just as an example, the Quran. So what I did was I took down Have I Been Pwned, which is, these numbers are probably a little bit lower than they will be now, because it's like a month or 2 old in terms of the number of hashes. But you can see, just by looking through the Have I Been Pwned database, in 2 through 6 gram, with and without the Toxic 3 rules to show about that case modification, how many passwords were found in their respective brackets there. And we've also done, the Quran in native Arabic as well, so you can see how far it can actually go just by generating these engram word lists. And they're really quick, they're really easy to do. You just need to, of course, source a list. So if you're doing a targeted attack, or maybe it's a password CTF, and there's a theme of like films and movies. Download loads of films and movie scripts. Fine, run your engrams on it. You'd be amazed at the mileage you can get. Right then. So, again, this attack's kind of been around for a while, but I think it's been quite kind of underlooked and people aren't using it as much. Let's say you've taken a fast run at a load of hashes. By definition of a fast run, everyone loves RockUTXT. There are so much better dictionaries out there, but we all love RockU, so let's stick to RockU. I ran RockU with 1 rule tool and still generated a word list. Fine. Let's take the founds from that cracking session that I got, In this case, it's against the Game Ego data breach, which I think was from 2016, 2017. It was a gaming forum kind of website thing. And then you can separate the alpha and the non-alpha characters. Smash them both together in a combinator attack. People tend to use the same patterns repetitively, so we're all humans here. Statistically speaking, when we've been conditioned into adding a number and a special character into our passwords, you're going to use 1 or 1, 2, 3. When we use a symbol, again, conditioned over time, these things that we've been told believe make our passwords stronger and don't, you're most likely to use an exclamation mark. And that's not even because we love to exclaim our passwords. That's because we're lazy creatures of habit, and the exclamation mark is on the same key as 1. So 1 shift 1 is so much easier than dragging my hand across the keyboard to find a bracket or something else. So this is why 1, 2, 3 bang and all this kind of stuff works. And this attack will allow you to extract all of the non-alpha kind of clumps of data with non-alpha data there, smash them against all of your alpha characters, and you'll be amazed at the things you can find. Okay, intermediate scaling masks. I quite like this one. Interesting kind of use cases. This isn't necessarily applicable to everyone all the time, absolutely not. You need to know something about the password. So this isn't necessarily if you've dumped AD on a pen test and you're doing your usual workflows. But let's say you have some idea about the password. You know it starts with a number in this case. You know it ends in a special character. And let's say you know it's got some lowercase characters in the middle, but you don't know how many. And actually natively that's kind of quite hard to emulate in Hashcat. But you can do it, and there's a couple of ways with actually a very important but subtle difference. What you can do is you can take your first known, in this case we're using numbers, take your first known, put it into a word list with, of course, first char.text. You can then apply your mask. In this case we're just doing lower alpha characters. The -I is increment. That's very, very important because we'll start at 1 and scale up. Otherwise Hashcat would just attack the number of L's you put there. Standard out, type that standard out. Feed that back into Hashcat and then apply your last known, in this case a symbol, with a rule. So this is in hybrid mode. A6 is hybrid, wordless plus mask. You can get exactly the same functionality in A3, which is traditional brute force mode, by specifying your number to begin with, starting incremented from a minimum of 2 only, and doing the same thing. However, how many of these characters or how many L's you get will be more, generally, in A3 mode rather than A6. And that's because in hybrid mode, you've only got a 32-bit integer as the buffer to store. So you can hold a much smaller number. Your key space is going to be a lot smaller. Whereas in A3 mode, you've got a 64-bit integer. So you can store a lot more in there. You'll get much more mileage before you overflow. And Hashcat will, of course, error and tell you that. Okay, Markov chains. Anyone come across Markov before? Anyone done Markov attacks before? Oh, okay. All right, I'm talking to you then, sir. Let's say you're doing something very targeted, okay? Markov modelling is about statistical probability of a character based on its position in the preceding character. Very high-level example, if the first letter of a password's a Q, the next letter's more than likely going to be a U, not necessarily, but could be. And you can do lots of statistical analysis on passwords to see the frequency and distribution of characters, and this is what it's all about. So it's just that likelihood, increasing that probability. Now, by default, Hashcat uses RockQ as its internal Markov table. Okay, fine, again, RockQ, yes, it's been around for a long time, and that's fine. But let's say you want something more targeted. Let's say you've got a data breach that's related to Minecraft. And I use that example because there was a Minecraft community called Lifeboat that was breached. I did some research on that when I was originally creating one rule to rule them all, actually. It's reasonable to assume that if you've got millions of hashes from a Minecraft database, that the passwords are more likely going to be Minecraft related. Fairly fair to assume. And the distribution of letters in said Minecraft password, it could well differ from how people have created their passwords in the Rocky database. So, let's generate a Markov table. I went online, found a few Minecraft wikis, downloaded every object, skin, monster, and I'm not a Minecraft player, so shoot me if I'm butchering terminology here. As much as I could, downloaded a Minecraft word list, ran it through one rule, created a nice big obfuscated password list. Cool, fine. The next 2 steps are just to get it ready for Hashcat. Hashcat utils has that second binary there. That's just to generate the Markov table, and it needs to be compressed in a format that Hashcat is ready to accept it in. Fine. But ultimately, I then attacked the hashes, which were unsalted MD5 hashes, so perfect testbed for this kind of research. 8-character brute force, fairly standard, but I assigned my Markov table instead of letting Hashcat use its own. And after letting it run for just an hour, the Minecraft Markov cracked over 10,000 more hashes. Now, ultimately, if you were to let both attacks exhaust and get to the very end, of course they would have cracked the same amount. Absolutely. This is about getting more cracks from your password lists quicker, because there's plenty of times where you'll run a session and you'll see in it and it says 27 days. I'm not waiting for that. I mean, actually, let's be honest, if people see anything over 10 minutes, they usually control C these days. It's amazing how impatient we are. People need to get better. But yeah, this is about getting the most bang for your buck in a smaller time frame by using Markov. You can actually alter that. You can go deeper and say use the top X characters of a Markov table based on a full 95 character printable ASCII set. Okay, cracking hashes with hashes. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Let's take a step out of our password cracking adversarial hat. Let's say you're upgrading security for your users as an application. And let's say you're using unsorted MD5, smack your wrists, or SHA-256 or something else like that, and you want to upgrade your security to something solid, robust, secure, something like bcrypt, which is a very well-known, very resilient algorithm for attack. What do? Do you force mass password resets? Do you get your users to upgrade their hash on next login? Do you rehash the hash? Now I'm seeing some smiles, I'm seeing some shake your heads. There's some good and bad ways to do this. But this builds up to an attack which Sam Crowley, who goes by Chicken Man, one of the Team Hashcat guys, did a great talk a few years back with What the Shuck in DEF CON. And this is about attacking underlying inner hashes. As you can see in this example, if you take an MD5, fine. But if you bcrypt the MD5, let's say you're using MD5 and you just bcrypt over the top of it, we can attack that, that's fine. In this case, Hashcat's got a mode for it, 25600, and you can crack the underlying plaintext. Fine, but this does actually present a vulnerability and an issue for us. So let's put this into context. We've got a user, very happy user, because they've got what they think is a great password. And it's not a terrible password, but absolutely by no means uncrackable. Hard to crack, but not impossible. And that user reuses that password on 2 sites. Fine, unfortunately, people reuse passwords. We shouldn't be, but we do. Okay, site number 1 uses a vanilla SHA-256. Fine. Site 2 uses a bcrypt of a SHA-256. Both those sides get popped. Let's see, Hashcat's popped up now just to see what's going on. Now, at this point, the attacker's got 2 breaches. They're able to identify what the algorithms of these breaches are. Now, if they've got lists of users or email addresses, they can almost certainly, if they've cracked a faster hash, and they have cracked it, they can, of course, test that password again. But that's not always the case. And lots of the time, most of the time, you end up with big, big lists of uncracked hashes, MD5s, or in this case, SHA-256s. So what you can try and do then is bcrypt those uncracked SHA-256s to see if you get a hit. And if you get a hit, because the bcrypt matches, you don't know the password, but you know the inner hash. You know the SHA-256 that you can't crack. But even though you can't crack that and haven't got the password, it doesn't matter. Because now you can attack SHA-256 speeds instead of bcrypt speeds. And let's be honest, if your password isn't really, really simple, no one's getting out of bed to crack bcrypts. At least they shouldn't be. No one's got enough patience for that. But SHA-256 is reasonable. But the inner hash has to be fast, obviously, or at least faster than the outer hash that you're trying to shuck off. And it has to be unsalted. If the inner hash is salted, you can't do this. Hoping that would make sense as to why. But it's about moving into a place where you can attack weaker algorithms at faster speeds if the inner hash is unsalted. In a Windows AD pen test world, which 9 times out of 10 is where I'm doing this kind of stuff, and you can do it with NT hashes too. And I'm not condoning you save client hashes, by the way, and make lists so they wouldn't be happy. Do not do that. But this functionality, everything under the hood in Windows, Kerberos, cache creds, you name it, is NT. Everything is NT under the hood. And for those of you who are up on NT, you'll have heard finally that after Server 2025 and then 24H2 Microsoft is finally deprecating NTLM after years of waiting. They're only replacing it with Kerberos, which again has been around since the dinosaurs and has its own problems, but it's a small baby steps. But in Windows, if you've got a load of uncracked NT hashes, and let's say you've caught some NTL NV2s using Responder or Random 6, whatever it is you're doing, you can then take those NT hashes to try and crack the NTL NV2. Now, in this case, you wouldn't know the password. This is Windows. You've got the NT hash, pass the hash business as usual. I do know that modes for Kerberos have been worked on by Chicken Man and some of the other guys in the team, but they're pretty low priority, so I'm not going to say they're going to make it into Hashcat anytime soon. Okay, Unicode and transliteration. Anyone done this type of cracking before? Oh, okay, right. So, Unicode. Lots of fun. Everyone just homes on the emoji straight away. And I get it. I do too. We've got our 95 printable ASCII characters. Okay, that's fine. There's many, many more characters out there than ASCII, as I'm sure you're all aware. In this example, we've just gone to a lookup table here, and we can see we've got 600 to 6FF code points for Arabic, which is the excerpt here shown in the middle, 600 to 6FF, just to print out the Arabic characters. Similarly, you've got 101 Asian character sets, and when you go into more Asia, some of them get really complex, because UTF-8 can store up to 4 bytes per character. Printable ASCII is nice for us, it's 1 byte per character. But emojis, for example, they take 4 hex bytes, 4 UTF-8 bytes per character. So the ability to crack a pure emoji password, you won't be able to crack like 20 emojis because you have to attack 4 bytes per character. You're going to run out of key space and overflow very, very quickly. Just a one-liner there from Yanis, which I told him I totally stole from his great talk at DEF CON, just to show you how you can print these out. You'll notice down the bottom here, for example, Arabic D880 is the Arabic number sign. So we've got 2 hex bytes per Arabic character, which is pertinent for the bottom example here for emojis in a second. Now, whilst Hashcat can take native Unicode characters in via standard in, for example, in the top, it's not designed for that. It's designed to crack in hex, which is the bottom example here. So in this emoji example, we've got 4 custom character sets. Because if you go back to a lookup table, find the emoticons, emojis however they're referred to, and look down the list, you'll see they've all got 4 hex bytes. And in the case of emojis, the first byte is always F0, the second byte is always 9F. The third byte could be 9899A9, 9A or 9B, and the fourth byte could be any of them. So what you can do is you can paste the hex into Hashcat, make sure you specify hex charset, so Hashcat knows it's attacking hex, and then apply your mask. In the case of emojis, you'll see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So even though there's 16 character masks there, that's only 4 emojis that's cracking, because each emoji requires those 4 hex bytes. So again, your mileage may vary. But people can do it, people use it, we'll see in the next slide, and you can use it in rules. So rules is a nice way of getting emojis in. Hashcat accepts it, you do need to escape the X in the rules. So the hex here, you can prepend, you can append, you can prepend or append. These rules can get very, very big, as you might imagine, so try not to go too far. But people use them in real life, especially, people creating accounts on mobile phones these days. I'm sure people have seen, like, Wi-Fi SSRDs that full of emojis and stuff. Yeah, they are a real thing. People do use them. And you'll tend to see people love the love emojis. It's all about hearts and kisses when you're using emojis. Maybe I need to be a 16-year-old child to kind of get that, who knows. But these are things you can do to help increase your chance of attacking Unicode. And if you were to look down, this list, for example, there are better sites for it, and grab every single code point you've got and create a big list of them. You can run it over your existing word lists. You can run it over things that you've cracked in the past. And you can create lots of different word lists that contain these different Unicodes and foreign character sets and all this kind of stuff. And then you can use that. You can use literally Asterisk. You can wildcard a folder containing all of your stuff, which I've done a few times. Mangle that, because why not? And you can get some crazy stuff out of it. Again, all real passwords. Some of these, even like just dots, for example, I don't know half of what these characters and languages are, but you can crack them. They do exist. And these are things that you're not necessarily going to find unless you're looking for them. Okay, transliteration. I won't ask, maybe I will ask, who thinks that's a strong password? By virtue of me asking you that, I appreciate no one's probably going to put their hand up. But if anyone doesn't want to be a liar and own up, who thinks that's a strong password? We've got 1. We've got 2. Okay, it's good. I admire your courage and honesty. Right. Okay. Yes, it doesn't look like a terrible password. It uses lower alpha, it uses numbers. Okay, so we've got a pool of 36 characters there to choose from. Okay. What if I was to tell you, though, that password's been found in, at the time I downloaded Have I Been Pwned, 890 data breaches, taking the NT hash of that. That's very strange now. That's very strange. And it's because those characters, the actual transliterated password of my password, have been typed into a Zillion keyboard layout, which is almost wholly Taiwan and potentially other surrounding countries as well. Now, the translate password might be hashed. It's not always hashed, it might be. It depends on the keyboard, the HID you're using, how that's passed to the operating system. But again, that looks weird as hell, but it's actually a terrible password. And there's lots of good reading on this. It's not new, but it's really underlooked and underknown about. Because we look at that and we think, solid, password manager generated, but it's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible password. See, what you can do is you can create lookup tables. And we've got an example in a second, where you can then attack translate passwords. Again, if you're a researcher and you've got data breaches, I use data breaches for my research and stuff, you'd be amazed at how many times you can find where the translate password's been hashed, not the native Unicode text. Okay? So, old school method of doing this with hashcat legacy. So, I mean, you can still do it using hashcat legacy. It's called a table lookup attack. But a friend of mine who actually speaking to me about translate passwords, and I was moaning to him about hashcat legacy, ended up creating this lookup tool. He wrote it, and it's very quick, it's very nice. And if you give it lookup tables, it can then do this kind of attack for you in this kind of way. So, let's take our base word list. Russian Cyrillic is fantastic for this. Really, really useful. Again, the quality of the source of your word list may vary. There could be dodgy characters in here. Of course, you're not really going to know. Create a lookup table. Plenty of ways you can do that. Some exist online. You can install the Russian keyboard layout and start typing. Just press A, B, C, D and see what comes out. Create your lookup table. Get the translate of that. Okay, now we've got a load of gibberish. You'll invariably find non-ASCII characters in there too. And for cleanliness, I just got rid of them. So all I wanted to do was get ASCII characters. So this was, I can't remember how big my Russian word list was, but I got lots. I got lots of transliterated passwords. I then threw that against, that wasn't Aberdeen Pwned, it was a data breach, I can't remember which one. And that cracked. And yeah, I was like, what the hell? Because you're not going to get those candidates in dictionaries. Of course you're not, because they're transliterated passwords. And then just for fun, because why not, you can reverse translate that lookup and then translate it if you wanted to. So in the first example here, you can bounce that back to its native Unicode and then convert it if you wanted to. Translate it, sorry, if you wanted to. But yeah, it's really, really weird, but it is there, and people aren't doing it. So this goes back to my rant about why it's a terrible password, and again, I admire the courage and honesty of the people who put their hands up. Because the entropy of that password's 62 bits, okay? Which isn't terrible. It isn't terrible. It's not where we should be at a minimum, but it isn't terrible. However, entropy, which does work, is a thing, and is great, only applies to machine-generated passwords. No exceptions. By that I traditionally mean password managers, but you know there are lots of ways to generate passwords with secure amount of entry. But human-generated passwords, entropy does not apply to, because all it does for us is societally quantify it. When I asked you who thought that was a good password, you looked at it and thought, looks pretty random. So, no, it's not. It's a terrible password. So we're not unintelligently brute forcing this. No one runs Markov disable, which in hashcat would actually start A, B, C, D, A, B, A, C. No one does that. When you're brute forcing in hashcat and your other tools, by default, you're getting a leg up. You're getting a helping hand. You're attacking with Markov, which gives you, statistically speaking, based on that table, the highest likelihood of guessing those letters. So, yeah. Like I said, entropy only applies to machine-generated passwords, but it's good as an example. Rule optimizations. Okay, let's move away from attacks now. The maximum password length for fast hashes in dictionary mode is 31, with optimized kernels, specifically optimized kernels. So there are some rules that we can remove, because if you're guessing passwords at speed, you're going to generate candidates that are above 31 characters, and they're going to result in operations. So in this example here, we're using the P and the D, which is the duplicate and append the duplicated buffer a number of times. You can see here on the left, we've just taken the word password. And if we run P1, P2 and P3, it's going to duplicate it once. It's going to duplicate it twice. The 8 times 4 here is 32. That's above 31, so it's only the original word. Okay. Similarly, duplicate twice, add the last letter 7 times. That fits into the 31 buffer. An 8th, adding a D, it doesn't, so it will stop and the no operation will occur. You'll get there. Now, if you're assuming you're attacking passwords that are bigger than 8 characters, things like P3 upwards and Z0 upwards can be removed from rules, because each of those is a compute cycle, it's an operation. Similarly, there's interesting cases where the final length of your candidate is less than the intermediate length. So the bottom rule is actually the real one, but I've stepped through this to try and hopefully make it clearer. Let's say we've got the password of super secure 1 bang here. If we were to prepend 1, 2, 3 to that, we could do it in the first rule, and you can see how it comes up. In the second rule, We're then going to do P4, duplicate the whole thing 4 times. That's going to be bigger than 31 characters. It's not going to operate. But then we truncate at the 9th character in the last rule. That does drop us back under, but that P4 now becomes redundant. Optimise it out. There's no need for it. Again, 2 more tools, and I know it's the same guy, but he's done a lot of fantastic work. He's part of the hash mob team. Vivaldi, Rule Processor Y can really help you do this. And he actually helped me optimise one rule to rule and still further after I released it. So yeah, kudos. Right then, iterative hashing and case sensitivity. Now, I don't have a lot of answers for some of these because there's weird stuff you find in data breaches. Sometimes systems will store iterative hashes, like a SHA-1 of a SHA-1 of a pass, for example. Yeah, if they natively store that, that's fine. But sometimes, like, hashes and weird things find their way into passwords. Maybe it's stupidity, quite often is. Sometimes there's an insecure generator where, unbeknown to the user, it's doing something very weak and insecure. And for most of the time, I just have no idea. Like, literally, nearly all the time, I have no idea. So a couple of examples of past data breaches here, all of which are vanilla MD5, single, unsalted MD5. And this is where I'm using a tool called MDX Find, CPU-based cracker, but fantastic for big hash lists, like in the tens of millions. Really good for unknown hash testing as well. And you can see in each of the examples, we've got a cracker at the top, this L04. But when you look down here, you can see we've iterated it twice. The MD4 of the first iteration is that, and then hashing the MD5 a second time gives you the resulting hash that cracks. So there were only 5 in the first one. Yeah, okay, maybe there were 5 clever people who thought, you know what, I'm going to MD5 my password and then paste that in as the password. 5, okay, reasonable. 40 for this second one here. We're only 700,000 users in that. Slightly higher numbers. Yoku breach was a very big breach, 48 million MD5 hashes. 692, okay, more hashes granted, but that's not necessarily the most trivial number of nested hashes to find in there. But when you look at the data, you can see that the plain text is a hash. So now, why is the plain text a hash? Is that real? Was the data kind of polluted or dirty before it got ingested? It's hard to tell, and I don't really have an answer for you. But seeing hashes there, of course, you have to take that one step further. And they did, in fact, crack. So technically, that's a third nest, if you want to think about it that way. Really deep inside the rabbit hole now. And there were actually nearly 11,000 double nested MD5s as well, where you can see it's gone through the loop 3 times. So they do exist, and don't just assume that you're working on an MD5 breach that every hash in there is necessarily going to be MD5. But MDX Find is a great tool that can help you identify some of this stuff. Okay, even intermediate case sensitivity. Let's take the password of password. Cool, we all know that. No one in here has ever used that password, I have no doubt. Let's hash it. This is the SHA-1 hash we're using. But in this case, we're going to take the lower and the uppercase of the SHA-1 hash, which is very important. Now, Hashcat by default uses lower. Most of the time you see lower, but there are places with actually uppercase hashes. Now, if you then hash that a second time, the final hash, of course, is going to be completely different. Because while the intermediate hash was the same, the case sensitivity does matter because we're now hashing that again. So now I've got 2 completely different hashes for the lower and upper of password. And this one, 353E here, you can actually see in the 4th row here. So that's the lower hash here, and the upper hash for the top 20 passwords of RockQ. Double nested. Okay, so these are SHA-1 of SHA-1, but just as an example, it's the lower and the upper. And you can see as you go around, Hashcat is very pleased to hop around the screen and show you that both the lower and the upper were found this number of times in Have I Been Pwned again at the time of a month or 2 ago. So it does happen where intermediate case sensitivity can affect the resulting hash. Okay, password placebos. Right, Chicken Man has said, what shouldn't you be using? Yeah, Bitcoin addresses. I thought, that's got to be rubbish. People wouldn't do that. Yeah, they did. And I had a bit of a run, 172 Bitcoin addresses I found, so these are the clear text passwords, because, we're leak secure people who think that if I use my Bitcoin password, that is going to be good. So I thought, why not? Let's move onwards and upwards. I downloaded the 33 richest, populated Ethereum wallets. And sure enough, a load of Ethereum passwords were cracked. But what's this? The observance of you might have noticed that not only have people used their Ethereum wallets, they've actually put 123 and exclamation mark at the end. Again, all these things that we're conditioned into believing make our password stronger. Wow. I mean, I was lucky. I literally just handwrote a couple of quick rules to add 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, exclamation mark, all the usual kind of rubbish that we do. And yeah, I was amazed to find them. And of course, there's going to be more. But yeah, so then I thought, okay, what's next? We've done crypto. Let's move on to personal identification numbers. So I started researching the format and structure of, not necessarily they're all like passports or anything like that, they're respective national IDs for the countries. And I'm also not saying that there's no possible chance that someone could have constructed that format by themselves anyway. Yes, I completely can see that might be the case. But social security numbers, people do use social security numbers as their passwords. They shouldn't. But again, you can, be interested, be inquisitive. Think what's weird, crazy, and random you should never be used as a password. Try it. Guaranteed. If you throw enough, at a wall, someone will stick. So then I found this one. If you Google, this is 2020, how to generate a secure password, take the Unix epoch timestamp of the current date, SHA-256 it, base 64 that, and then just take the first 32 characters, so truncate the resulting value if necessary. Wow, okay, let's try it. Now, I didn't generate from the 1st of January 1970, I only went back to 2015, and I decided, why not, let's just try SHA-1 instead of SHA-256. Take the first 32 characters, and within seconds I got a hit. I stopped it for the benefit of just the slide. But you can see here, this was the crack. Working back into my generated word list that I did to do it, you see where that was truncated from, what the resulting hash was, and converted it back into a date. So someone probably at that time generated a password using a very insecure password generator. But I wasn't stopping there. I'd only opened my second beer. I was going strong. Science, why not? Downloaded a list of chemical formulas, compounds, whatever, put up through prints, minimum element count of 2, and I went for a minimum password length of 10 just to weed out some of the lower stuff where there's a higher chance of it occurring naturally. Ran that through MDX find, just for SHA-1, and yeah, science, I killed it at 12 hours because I was never going to finish, but I got 121 cracks in that 12 hours. And as you can see, I got some cool stuff. So if anyone wants to nominate me for a chemistry Nobel Prize for compound discovery, I will accept nominations. But some of these, it's up to you whether you think that these are passwords that could legitimately be done. Yeah, of course there's a chance. But there were more than what's shown on the screen. Some of them were some crazy, crazy compounds. So yeah, a lot of scientists out there taking their work home. And then you keep on Googling, you find the invariable Stack Overflow things where someone said, I create memorable pseudo-passwords with high level of entropy by starting off with a capital vowel or consonant, wherever it is, and then alternating, random consonants and vowels. Right, let's just get into that. It's not the worst, but it's not high. It doesn't apply. That's just rubbish. Sure, it's not, it's not rubbish. It's not susceptible to traditional dictionary attacks, but it's susceptible to very, very simple ones, as we're going to find out. This is complete rubbish. Short passwords can't be good. So yeah, just scripts, generate possible combinations, and again, mixing and matching after capital, consonant, vowel. Again, I'm not saying that all of these were a result of that Stack Overflow post, but you can find out random things and people will do it. Right, on to the last bit. I think I'm still just about right for time. Automating non-descriptive hashtag workflow. So a few weeks ago, I released Hash Catalyst because we don't all have massive GPU files. We don't all have hash top lists. We can't afford to farm out money for AWS and the rest of it. And there have been plenty of times where I've had stuff running on my local GPU at home, and I'm going to go to bed at night, but I know the attack I'm currently running will exhaust in like an hour or two, and there's all that dead wasted time. And that happened enough that I got really annoyed. I wanted something that could just automate and chain things together. So there's a bash script, Windows batch file variants. You plug in a number of file paths, which I'll show in a second, and then you can, these are the kind of attacks I've gone with. You can chain them together, and then some extra stuff because people aren't generating good word lists enough. Got some word list augmentation, where you can use things like expander and cutb from the Hashcat util suite to splice up and mutate both your word lists and the passwords that you've cracked to generate new word lists. So select 16, which is custom attack, and I'll do a demo in a sec. Pick your chosen attacks, and then wait possibly forever, depending on how adventurous you're feeling. Inside the respective files, these are the file paths you set. So point it to your folders you want for rules. If you want a specific folder for nested rules, we've got it all out individually. Just make sure all your word lists are .txt and all your rules are .rule. I've also included the rlite binary from Cynosure Prime, which is fantastic for sorting and deduping. Whilst Windows does have an undocumented unique switch for sort.exe, it's garbage. and you move outside of ASCII and it just falls over. Whereas rlite sorts and dedupes beautifully, so it's included in there, and it's got attack logging. So when an attack starts, it logs it. So it's quite nice to see the things you've gone through, especially if you've got like 6 word lists, 700 rules, and you can see what started and stops. And at that point, I will quickly live demo. Let's go for it. Oh, there you go. Let's, in fact, let's start this without, just to show you. I'm going to delete my pot file. Okay. Okay, pot file not yet created. Have I? Let's delete that. And attack log not yet created. Hash catalyst, right. So, hopefully you can all see this all right. Again, number of options here. You can always type 28 to show your current paths, which I'll do just to show you that I'm using very, very basic, like top 100 word list, best 64. Really, it's a demo, all right? We don't need to worry about horsepower here. But let's say I want to do a custom attack, and I want to do nested rules, number 7, comma, with a hybrid attack, 3 character incrementing mask with a full ASCII character set, and then let's say I want to go YOLO, why not? Word list with 250,000 random rules. So you run that, and you'll see that when the hashes start cracking, they'll appear on the right, up here. You've got the attacks being logged down here, so you can see it's iterating through. 3 character mask here, incrementing, full ASCII. It'll log it. Now, it will log at the start of the attack, so you can't really do much in terms of what logging when it completes. But if you've got like a huge word list and rule set, and the timestamp is like 20 seconds apart, something's gone wrong, hashcat skipped over it, maybe you've given it an incalculable attack. And because all the rule-based attacks with loopback as well, so loopback takes the cracks in your current session and then feeds it back in to reapply the rules over the top of it. If you're using a rule, always dash loopback. It baffles me why not many more people are using this. And that will just keep going and going invariably until eventually loopback can't crack anymore. Oh, look at that. It's cracked 1 more on that loop. 2 more. So now it's going to take those 2 cracks and feed them back in for another 250,000 random rules. So with random rule generation, this could go in indefinitely, but of course we're using very, very small words. Eventually, it's going to stop. But either way, we're still on this attack. I've only given it 7-2 and attack 14, which is as far as we're going to get. Needless to say, is that going to finish? Oh, it's looking promising. I think we're on to a winner. If not, I'll just quit it.
It doesn't overheat.
It doesn't. Well, it's because it's random rule generation. This is the beauty of it. It's nothing like an on the fly demo. Oh, quit it. All right. Either way, let's go back and have a look. You can type 29, show your cracked passwords. So now it'll span out everything you've got. But now, let's say you want to use those cracked passwords, those founds, inside a word list. We can do that. Option 21, create a founds list from your pot file. So if I type 21 now, it'll generate in the word list folder that I've specified, lists folder, potfile.txt. So I can now go in and find that, and that's now got a word list that I've just done for my cracks. And I can go further, because now I can do something like, let's say, expand that word list, expand the founds that I've just done. 22, I've now got expanded pot file text in the same folder. Expanded pot file.txt. And it's now spliced up using expander, which by default has a length and len max of 4. I've recompiled that for 10, I think, in this instance. 8's pretty good for mileage. And you can see how it's mutating your word list. Apologies about the profanity. This is the top 100 word list. And you can see how it's splicing it out. So then you can take that word list, run that by itself, or in combination with other things. We've got free training that we used to have commercially, open sourced it a few years ago. If you're not sick and tired of the sound of my voice already, and you should do, you can have 4 more hours of it on YouTube. There's a VM to download, VirtualBox OVA format, pre-built with 15 hands-on questions and answers, challenges to really get your teeth into it and get the practice. It covers foreign language Unicode. We have an old CTF from 2018 where there is no cryptocurrency prize left either, so have a go at that. And if you're feeling daring and can find me, you can win a coveted, priceless Insecurity Glow-in-the-Dark challenge coin if you find me. It's not the simplest of things, and it does use attacks that we've seen in this talk. All you'll need is the top 100 word list from Seckless if you're interested. So take a picture if you do want to have a go at it, but I encourage you to enjoy the conference, of course, while you're here. But with that wraps it up. I think I'm just about done for time. And I'll answer your first question for you. Where's Hashcat? Don't worry, Hashcat was not forgotten. But thanks very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. And obviously, if you've got time for questions, great. We don't. No worries.